Last week, I had a 30-minute hands-on demo with Apple's new Vision Pro headset, alongside a 90-minute run-through at their developer center. Now, I spent a lot of time writing Swift and writing about Swift, so all the way through these sessions, my brain was just fizzing. I was thinking, how's that effect done? Or how can we adopt that in our own apps? And so on. So I wanted to sit down and record my thoughts. Yes, walk you through my experience, what I had, but also tell you what I think it means for developers and give you some advice on what it takes to get ready your app ahead of the Vision Pro release. I should add, to be clear, I'm talking specifically about Vision OS and Vision Pro from a programmer's perspective. If you're looking for a mainstream review of the device, there are lots of great folks out there from mainstream press like MKBHD and similar who've done wonderful videos. Go and check them out instead. Before I start, I want to say how grateful I am to Apple for letting me try the device. Give me a chance to really try it for half an hour because almost everyone else who tried it was from mainstream press. And as a result, I've got a different take, right? I approach everything through this lens of programming. We've seen so many of these APIs before. We know ARKit, we know RealityKit, we know SwiftUI. It's things we know. It's things we're already using. And what Apple has done is take these APIs we know and extend them greatly in this release. SwiftUI now has 3D support, for example. It then ties them all together with extremely close coordination and, of course, adds in a huge amount of groundbreaking hardware. But then most importantly, polished and polished and polished the whole experience again and again and again. And to be clear, what we see as Vision Pro V1 is to Apple actually Vision Pro V1000. This is so polished, right? Now, my demo took place in a building called the Field House at Apple Park. I was not allowed to take photos inside the building. And when I asked Apple's PR folks who were with me for the demo, could they get a picture or video of me using the device, they said that wasn't allowed either. In fact, the only picture I was allowed to take was of the Field House itself from outside. And even then, the Apple PR person who was escorting me said I had to take the picture from exactly where she was standing. They were very precise. And I'll put that on the screen in case you're really, really curious. My understanding is this thing was built the week before DubDub and torn down the week after DubDub, which just blows my mind because it really felt permanent, like it had always been there. Now, on the walk to the Field House, the thing I was just overwhelmingly concerned about was how it would work with my glasses, right? And let's face it, a large portion of our industry wears glasses as well, so many folks are going to be worried. Please don't be worried. The device has room inside the headset for magnetically attached prescription lenses. It is slot in. And I left my glasses behind. And it was a really freeing experience for me, quite frankly, because it felt like temporarily I had regular eyesight. With none of the sort of horrible extra pressure I was used to from having glasses on with Oculus or PSVR. The demo that they walked everyone through was designed to show off the core features of the device, right? Plus a few things they couldn't show in the keynote. And so that means we started swiping through photos, seeing how they looked, seeing the old style panoramas come to life in 3D space, and then seeing the new immersive, like really immersive 3D videos that are shot with the camera itself built into the headset. And it felt actually weirdly emotional watching some kids I don't even know singing Happy Birthday in front of me because you're there and you're in the room and it feels like they're singing to you. And that almost unnerving level of realism extends to the immersive environments too, like the Mount Hood environment. You see it versus a panorama, but you turn the digital crown, right? And what happens is, it's hard to explain. The mountain just kind of leaks into the room. It doesn't just get scale up bigger and bigger and bigger. It just starts to flow around you like Mount Hood was made of mist and then just pouring out the picture and taking up all space around you. And here's where you see how good the occlusion detection is in their ARKit stuff because it was quite remarkable. There was a knee-high table in the room with me and Mount Hood just kind of expanded around it and then over the table and then through the table. And I was kind of waving my hands, testing out the occlusion, and it worked great. It was so impressive. I even had to ask one of the engineers afterwards, was I seeing my hands waving around or a video of my hands waving around because the quality was so good. And that kind of question says a lot about the quality of the screen. That's how good it is. And honestly, the weirdest thing was when Mount Hood became fully immersive, I genuinely felt a little shiver of cold, right? It was so real that I had a placebo weather effect in my brain, and it told me, yeah, be cold now, shiver, this is a cold place. In fact, the very first demo they gave you was this thing where you extend your hand and a butterfly flaps around, lands on your finger. Again, it's so realistic, you want to flick the little bug off. That's what it feels like, even though you know it's not there, it's that realistic. And then we walk through a selection of apps like Messages and Safari and TV and more. What I can say for sure is that the difficulty ramp up for us as developers is really shallow. Apps built in both SwiftUI and UIKit work brilliantly pretty much out of the box. They're putting a lot of work here. They're doing extensive work here, which means most apps provide a good experience just going. Great. What's more though, if you do a little extra work, just like you tailor your SwiftUI code for macOS or watchOS or whatever, then you get a really good experience. It's just small things like adopting the new glass effect. You know, we have like a background of like an ultra thin material in SwiftUI. Fine, that's great. But there's a new glass effect background just for Vision OS, because this new glass effect actually has some depth attached to it. So user can place a window, then walk around the window and see the thick pane of glass holding up your app. So it's a different style entirely. Also, the idea of, tailoring for light and dark mode isn't a thing anymore. You just don't do that because the UI automatically adapts to your surroundings. That's the point of it. In the simulator, you'll see when you get the SDK ships in a few weeks from now, you can actually set your surroundings to simulate a various number of places and set the time of day. Show me the room at daytime, show me at nighttime to make sure your UI adapts correctly. This makes it more important than ever to add Apple's vibrancy effect to things like text, to make sure it really stands out. Now, the whole UI is controlled through eye tracking and gesture tracking. So you look where you want to activate, then make a small tap or a pinched drag with two hands to activate stuff. And like I expect everyone else, I started out doing gigantic, big gestures to control things. But in the end, I was doing micro gestures in my lap down here next to my hips because it was so much easier to work with. I actually started having fun with the UI at this point because I was grabbing the Safari window, moving around quickly all over the place, in, out, up, down, just to see how responsive it was, and also admiring the shadowing effect because it beautifully flows around the room. And I was like, oh, the shadow's moving around of the table and the floor. They've done such a great job with things like occlusion and wall detection. It works really, really well. And it's no surprise. These APIs have been around for years now. They've been building up for years now. And so, unsurprisingly, Apple deliver a great experience with them. I know when things were small, like for example, text in a random Safari website, I was told just pinch and zoom in with two hands. That works. You can do that, of course you can. But I just grabbed the window, right? I made the whole window bigger, and it was this huge Safari window, and it all just reflows flawlessly in Safari in real time. The device has an M2 chip inside. It's just packed with power. An Apple developer event on Tuesday, by the way, I got to meet some engineers who worked on Vision OS. And I was really curious how they managed to get this kind of performance. Like, I know it's a fast chip, right? But it's pushing a lot of pixels. It turns out the device actually has a small fan inside to keep it cool. And I've taken steps so you don't really realize it's happening. That means the fan gently blows warm air upwards away from your face. So you don't really feel it. But they also said, this is it's brilliant. They very gently play some noise-cancelling audio for the fans through the speakers to counteract whatever small sound remains from the fans. And so even if you're in a room that's absolutely silent, you'll feel completely quiet. You'll hear no fan noise at all. It's remarkable. The developer event is also where they said, here are some of the various ways there are subtle differences when building for Vision OS than what you're used to on other platforms. For example, if you have a 3D model placed into a SwiftUI stack, what happens is the back of the model hits your plane with your text and other images. Now, normally in SwiftUI, we kind of center things. We like centering vertically and horizontally. For depth, though, it goes to the back of the thing, not the center, which basically is done because it's what folks expect. It means we aren't wondering why half our models are invisible when we place them, right? We also learned things like how dynamic type is subtly adapted on Vision OS. Things that were a regular font are now a medium weight font, so slightly heavier. Things that were semi-bold are now bold, just increasing the level by a little bit to be easier to read in these 3D environments. Apple also said they have a recommended tap target area of 60 points, so things are easier to select with your eyes. We also learned how existing SwiftUI views adapt to this new 3D spatial computing environment, with so many existing views changing subtly. There's a new layout style called an ornament, and these ornaments sit in 3D space alongside your views, and they avoid clutter by getting out of the way when they aren't being used. For example, SwiftUI's tab view, you've seen it on all the other platforms. On iOS, bottom bar. On macOS, group buttons. On watchOS, swiping pages. And tvOS, it's a picker. But on Vision OS, it changes again. It becomes this new ornament style here, showing a list of icons across the left of the screen. When your eye rests on the icons, it expands out to show the labels for those icons as well. You'll also find that popovers and sheets and context menus are also automatically become these ornaments, which is really, really nice. In fact, I think basically almost every iPad OS SwiftUI app is on Vision OS amidst extensive support. In fact, one piece of advice they were very clear on was to look closely at the desktop class iPad API stuff announced last year. If your app already works great there with things like handling window resizing, for example, then you're in a very, very strong position for Vision OS. Now, before you ask, you cannot monitor eye tracking at all. There's simply no API to do it. Heck, even reading gestures with someone's hands requires the user taking on a privacy notification first and accepting it. What you can do is attach a hover effect to controls, like if you've done tvOS work. So when a user's eye kind of rests on a button, it lifts off the background in 3D, for example. You can't tell when it's happened or not happened, but at least apply the effect for you when they're focusing on it with their eyes. And if the user does grant permission to read their hands, you'll be able to read what they're pointing at. You can use skeletal detection with the finger joints and so forth. But no eyes, right? Apple is taking privacy extremely seriously here, which is, no surprise. If you're wondering, Apple has been very clear on this front. SwiftUI is a preferred development environment for Vision OS. Now, they have said right from the beginning, SwiftUI was involved in Vision OS, and today the majority of the core system apps are built with SwiftUI. It's extremely baked into Vision OS, which is amazing to see. Yes, of course, you can use UIKit to build apps in Vision OS, but you lose some behaviors. Right? Placing 3D content in your view means embedding a reality view from SwiftUI. And Apple have flat out deprecated storyboards for Vision OS. They're very clear, SwiftUI is the best way to build Vision OS apps. Now, if you have concerns about your app working well or not well on Vision OS, Apple have said they intend to offer compatibility testing. They'll look at your app for you at the Cupertino headquarters somewhere, presumably, and identify any potential issues on your behalf and let you know what to do to make it work better. Now, I can imagine it being quite a stampede for the service, so watch out for it being announced. Anyway, back to the live demo. Sorry. One app we tried was FaceTime, which features the new digital personas that Apple talked about in the keynote. It works well, of course, it's very, very clever, but two things stuck out to me in particular. First, the person speaks to you and you can grab them and move them around in 3D space. And their voice as they're talking follows their persona around absolutely flawlessly. The audio is incredible. And it's really an experience all by itself. The headset uses directional audio positioned right next to your ears. I didn't have any AirPods on at all or similar. So I could hear folks talking to me from next to where I was sitting and hear perfectly clearly what the headset was saying to me in just amazing 3D space. And it meant that audio was loud and clear for me, but I wasn't cut off from folks around me. And critically, it was almost imperceptible to folks around me. Now, yes, of course, if you're listening to loud music and someone's right next to you, they're going to hear a little bit. Just like having loud headphones on, for example. But otherwise, what you hear is just for you. but you're also able to hear folks around you perfectly. You aren't cut off, you aren't blocked off from the world, unless you choose to be, because you can connect AirPods if you want to. It's down to you. Part of the device setup, by the way, was scanning my ears and face to figure out face size and shape. I guess part of that also helps with the audio calibration. Actually, while I'm mentioning device setup, it was very, very clever. When you put the device on, you're asked to make your eyes follow a series of dots around the screen, then lift up your hands straight to the screen in front of you, presumably to measure things like hand size and visual acuity. That's the first thing I loved about the FaceTime call was the audio was just so impressive. It sounds amazing. I think all by itself is going to offer a whole range of delightful opportunities for developers. The second thing was how my caller brought up a freeform board, like Apple's whiteboard thing with various things on, and then she started talking me through the board. Now that alone, I get it, is not special, because we used the idea of SharePlay working in our apps, but what I loved, like really genuinely clever stuff, was how my caller was able to turn towards the freeform screen while talking to me about it and just gesture towards it. As you can see here, And what Apple's doing here is quite magical because they've ensured that everyone in the FaceTime call uses the same projection transform when using SharePlay content. So everyone looking at the board faces the same way. It is such an unnecessary, pointless, gratuitously amazing detail. I love it. It works so well. It's unreal. Towards the end of the demo, there were two things Apple showed that weren't in the keynote because they just wouldn't work. First, a new video format shot for immersive 3D, and it's filmed in deep 3D. I don't just mean like a simple two-camera setup you normally get in like theater, for example, like Avatar 3D. This is all new stuff that sucks you into the picture in a really remarkable way. Suddenly I was climbing a mountain or tightrope walking or whatever. It's very, very impressive. And it's interesting because if they'd shown that during the keynote, it would look like a regular movie. Because it's just hard to project that kind of 3D immersion into 2D space. You just can't do it. The second thing was the dinosaur demo, hopefully you've heard about already, which just blew the top off everything I've seen so far. Your demo takes place in a small room in this purpose-built fieldhouse structure at Apple Park. And the room was built up like someone's lounge, right? There's a sofa, there's a coffee table, there's books scattered around, But there's a large wall directly opposite me, which was empty. But in the final demo, a bright line kind of appears down the wall and just pulls apart like a portal into a dark and barren world. And you hear some rumbling coming, then a dinosaur walks towards you out of the world and into your room with you. And it's all live, I got up and walked around, the dinosaur's tracking me perfectly, sniffing me and so forth. And that was neat. And of course it's free enough, you feel you can just reach out and touch a dinosaur. But my coding brain kicked in right away. I walked right up to the wall, which I know is not there, but I can't see it anymore. I'm just seeing this 3D space. I know it's not there, but I'm walking right up to this wall, and I'm peering around this flat surface into the larger dinosaur world. And then I see another dino come out and start a fight with the first one, and I'm just really enjoying this remarkable AR wall anchoring they've done here with the scene. It works so, so well. And the demo ends there. Now, some folks asked me if I had problems with the weight of the device. I had no problem. It was only a 30-minute demo, so who knows, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, we'll see. Some other folks asked whether the demo was on rails, like whether I had to follow an exact path through. The answer is no. Although there was a range of apps to try, I very happily took my own path, They wanted to show me what it's like watching Avatar 3D in a virtual Dolby Atmos theater. Very cool. It was cool. I loved it. It's very neat. But I was like, I want to see the moon environment. Let's try that instead. And it worked great. I'm like, on the moon watching Avatar, because why not, Anyway, my main takeaways are as follows. 1, you've got to try this thing to understand how good it is. Seriously, Apple plans to run developer labs around the world, Cupertino, London, Tokyo, and more. And I can see why. Because when you try on the headset, folks will say, yeah, I want to build for this. Second, to be really clear, it works great with glasses. You get a custom-made prescription insert with Zeiss lenses. It just slots in magnetically. You leave your glasses behind. It looks and feels amazing. Apple have put a huge amount of work into this thing, making it accessible for everyone. No matter what your needs, they'll help find a way, hopefully. And third, it is really easy to get started with the code, right? Your SwiftUI code works well out of the box. With a few tweaks, it's going to look great. And from there, it's really all about how far you want to take it with RealityKit and more. Now, if you're looking for ideas, I feel pretty confident SharePlay will be a particularly hot prospect because the feeling of immediacy amongst friends is just powerful. So if you're looking at SharePlay or similar, good luck. That's going to be a great starting point. And now, the question I've been asked the most since I demoed the thing, will I get one? And the answer is absolutely very simple. Yes, I will. I already have several ideas I want to try out building, right? I want to get hacking straight away and build stuff and ship stuff. But I also want to help others learn to build apps with Vision OS, because I can see this thing being a genuine smash hit. And so as soon as Apple announce a developer kit that's available, I'm going to register for it and get building and get writing and get trying and experimenting, because it's a really, really exciting area right now. And for me, I think that's one of the most interesting parts about Vision Pro, is because Apple has this huge pool of developers already building apps for platforms for Apple, right? And thanks to the marvelous way Apple have adapted SwiftUI to the device, it means we're pretty much ready to go. I mean, yeah, they want to tweak it here and there. If you want your apps to really sing on Vision Pro, fine, you can add tweaks. But at the same time, Apple released, 50 or so sessions at WWDC 23, specifically to help developers make the most of Vision Pro. So please do take the time to watch them. Watch as many as you can before you dive into coding. I'll watch them all, that's for sure. And also watching out for Apple releasing new human interface guidelines, HIGs, just for the platform. Again, although our apps work well with no changes, just a little bit of tailoring, specifically for Vision OS, will make them feel really at home. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope you can tell I am genuinely excited by all the possibilities that Vision Pro gives us. I feel raring to go. As soon as the SDK ships, as soon as developer preview kits arrive, bang, I'll be on it from day one. I cannot wait. If you have further questions, please post them below in a comment and let me know if you plan to purchase the Vision Pro for yourself.